Any life story of my dad's has to start with his amazing mother, Frances Cunningham, and the family that she raised to be so loyal and devoted to each other. Known to many as Mom or Grandma, she was just a very special lady. She was dependable and kind and cared for many others throughout her life. She married Andrew Pat Cunningham, and she once told me that he'd take her out for ice cream, and she wasn't really planning on getting married, but eventually he wore her down. He was a butcher by trade and Grandma a seamstress. They had 6 children together, Dad being the 5th child of the 6, and they shared an April birthday. All the family's names were given the same monogram of RHC. I always thought that was cool growing up. So all my dad's brothers and his sister had the same initials as I did before I got married. The firstborn was Uncle Bob, or Robert. He was also known as the Great Tribini, a magician. Super at birthday parties for my cousin Corrine. He was also in sales and the only veteran, as he was conscripted to go to war when he turned 18. My grandma always used to say it was her that convinced him that he had to go because she knew he would return home safely. Rosebud was the next child and the only girl in the family. She was a waitress and a caregiver to the boys. She was also a Chantilly lady, a model for a perfume. She was a great artist and a strong family person who sadly died at the age of 65, leaving the boys to rally to their mother's side. Uncle Dick, or Richard, he was born during the Depression, and my grandma was always worried about him. She said she didn't get enough nutrition when she was pregnant, even eating grass to fill her belly. He was a successful house painter and handyman by trade, and a great saver and using lots of good old items. Here's a picture of Dad and Uncle Dick at the restaurant, and one at Grandma's house. Uncle Dick used to go back and look after Grandma when she was older. He lived with her and helped care for her. Here's the 3 boys, because next to talk about is Uncle Rod. Uncle Rod, I'm calling him the man up north, was a mill worker, a butcher, and the Silver Fox hockey player is how I know him. He married his wife Ruth, and they had 5 children together, all starting with the same initial R. Next is my dad, Russell Howard Cunningham. And isn't he cute here? He was born in 1935 in Regina, Saskatchewan. He always liked to say he was the youngest in the family and tried to bump Uncle Joe out of that spot. Here's another great picture next. Dad in Calgary in 1954 at age 19. Can see why Mom fell for him. Next, though, really was Uncle Joe. Little Joe. Raymond is his real name. He's the youngest, and he worked in Nanaimo at the newspaper before becoming a successful car dealer. Here he is here with the Shriners. Dad always used to say that Uncle Joe would run for miles down through the neighborhood just to look at a car that he thought was really neat coming through the streets. I think he found the right profession for himself. Here's from oldest to youngest with Dad kind of in the middle there. Uncle Bob, Uncle Joe, and Dad. A little more about Grandma. Grandma brought the family out to Nanaimo when Dad was about 11 from Saskatchewan. He has stories of delivering newspapers in the prairies in the snowstorms and almost being lost to the wind and snow. Grandma wanted to be closer to her parents that were living out here on the island. Pat, her husband, had left to go find work during the Depression and did not return. So she then raised the kids all on her own, with the help of Rosebud and their dog Bruce. Bruce was a wonder dog that used to babysit Joe as he napped before she was home from work. They all have great stories about their family dog Bruce. Grandma got a summer cabin for the family at Departure Bay when they first moved to Nanaimo. It was modest and not really made for the winter, but she made it home. The kids were a bit of a handful, but Grandma was not one to cross. There's a story when the boys stole some vegetables from a neighbor and the police came to ask questions. But Grandma defended her boys and said, "Oh no, not my children." Only later to find all the vegetables stuffed in the wood stove, being hidden from any view. I don't think they got away with anything, though. Grandma would have made sure of that. Grandma was always generous and known in the neighborhood as somewhere for all the kids to stop in for some food during hard times. She used to bake bread for the entire neighborhood. Dad used to say that they were so poor they only had jam sandwiches to eat, and he meant two pieces of bread jammed together. Later in life, she would build her own house on Drake Street, with the boys and their friends helping construct it piece by piece without ever going into debt. She did own a small house next door that she had her parents live in so she could care for them in their old age. I know my dad's work ethic, family loyalty, and generosity for anyone in need came from her. My mom used to say that Grandma was so gracious that when she met the Cunningham family, she believed that Pat had passed away since Grandma never said a bad word about him. Even though she was left to raise all the family on her own, she felt very blessed to have her kids. Some of the boys did go and work with Pat over the years, and many of the boys were great butchers and cooks, just like him. Dad didn't know his father well. He did call once when they had the restaurant to see if he could offer any ideas for promoting the place or for different things to cook. Later, he even asked Grandma if she would take him back in to look after him in his old age. Crazily, she actually considered it, but thought she was maybe a little too old herself to take that on. As I mentioned, Dad's first job was delivering newspapers in the snowdrifts of Saskatchewan. He also talked about finding golf balls and cleaning them up for resale. He always loved a good used item. He dabbled in magic and was an assistant on stage with Uncle Bob in his magic shows. Dad often says that he would have been a great magician if TV didn't come along when it did, that he would have been quite famous. Dad also worked for a time at the BC Ferries, the Black Ball, and tried his hand at commercial fishing. Later, he ended up having a restaurant with Uncle Dick in Chemainus, but they couldn't make a go of it. They weren't on top of the books very much, and I understand somebody kind of kept putting things in their pockets. He should have had Elaine then. Later, he was a bartender and pretty much a confirmed bachelor until he met Elaine, the New Zealand traveler who stopped in Nanaimo on her way across country to work in a restaurant called the Tally Ho, where he worked as the bartender upstairs. Mom was going to travel around the world, but when she met Dad, she was smitten right away. But first, Dad was off limits. She thought he was married due to the ring he always wore on his finger, but it wasn't a wedding band. It was a family ring from his mom with the initials RHC. As Mom tells the story, she kidnapped him on New Year's Eve once she learned he wasn't a married man. She left the party she was at to go find him at Frank O'Neill's New Year's Eve party and give him a kiss at midnight. The rest is history. She was ready to give up her travels for Dad since she was so in love, but Dad wasn't sure if he should stop her from her dream of traveling around the world. Elaine and her traveling companion Moana had been in Calgary for about a year. So she was getting ready to move on, but he made it out there to propose just in time, later giving her the engagement ring when they came back to Nanaimo in the very house that they were living up to today. They eloped and were married in Reno at the Rosebud Chapel on September 28, 1969. When they returned home, family and friends hosted a party for them at Graham Roberts' house. He even dressed up as a priest to remarry them in front of everyone as witnesses this time. When they were first together, they moved into Grandma's house and finished off the basement suite with, again, help from friends. We lived there until I was 5. Mom and Dad had an amazing garden in the backyard. When I was little, I thought Dad could do anything. And actually, he pretty much could. Gardening, building, electrical, fix cars, plumbing, and of course, cook. Dad has always had many friends. I felt growing up that he knew everyone. There was never a time when we went out together that somebody didn't say, "Hey Russ, how you doing?" Even the day we went to the dump on father-daughter date, he knew the guy at the gate. Some childhood friends are here today, Cliff Clark and Bill Taylor. As kids, they grew up across the street from his mom's house in Departure Bay and became part of Grandma's extended family. Many of Dad's good friends were major parts in my life growing up, and very important to Dad and Elaine throughout their lives. Friends like Bill Corrigal, who gave us our first dog. Here's a picture of Frank O'Neill on Conrad's boat with us. Bill even worked at the cottage for a time. Here's our first dog, Kiwi, that Bill gave us when I was just about 2 years old, and a special memory when I was about 5. Bill Corrigal and my dad filled the entire living room full of large-sized stuffies. I don't know where they got them from, but it was like he won them all at Circus in Reno. And I woke up to an entire room of Snoopies about the same size as me. It was fantastic. And of course, we all know Dad was a great cook. There's never any debating that with his restaurant. Many parties were had with Dad's many friends over the years. Dad used to say that some of them were high rollers and that he shouldn't really be trying to keep up with them, especially when they gambled. There are many times in the basement at our house on Alder Way when he'd ask me to blow on the dice so that I would bring him good luck when he was playing a game of craps. Here's a party when they were a little bit older. Lots of fun at retirement parties, or when you turn 50 and retire. After he was married and he started to quote unquote settle down, he became a car salesman with C&R Motors for Uncle Joe and his partner Graham Roberts. Ever the character, even had a blazer tailor-made that was half red and half blue in the colors of the two partners' logos. I still have the jacket. Just like my dad, I like saving things for a day that I might need it. It's even on display here today. Then he became a realtor with Nanaimo Realty, working with our famous mayor, Frank Ney, and also friends like Alan Lepton. Uncle Alan and Auntie Norma were like family to me, along with their kids, Carla and Andrew. We did lots of different things together growing up. Here's a picture of Mom and Dad with Al Lepton and the Corrigals. They were going to take a trip down to Reno. Auntie Norma said that was the one where they went and saw Elvis. My mom still raves about how she got tickets when no one thought they would to see the show. She was so excited. Then came the cottage. In about 1977, when real estate was getting tough, Elaine went back to work at the Tally Ho as a waitress. After a while, they decided to open up their own restaurant and work for themselves. The Cottage Fish and Chips was started in 1978. My dad bought the house that was on the corner of Mount Benson Street and the Island Highway from my Auntie Mag. Dad always loved good used things and a deal, so he found some fryers from Huddersfield, England, that were in a three pieces and survived a fire from another fish and chip shop on Nickel Street. With some help from Uncle Dick and my mom, and a lot of elbow grease, they cleaned them up and started their own fish and chip restaurant. They had some other equipment given to them by friends. Here's a picture of Dad filleting some fish out back. I remember the huge halibuts coming in, and Dad would cut them all up. He used to be out back singing songs like "The Cow Kicked Nellie" and "The Belly in the Barn," and some other old crazy song just to keep the time passing by as he was preparing all the fish for the restaurant. I even got to take a halibut skeleton to school one day in a black garbage bag as a science project. He cleaned it to perfection. Dad used to often say that if it wasn't for Conrad and his great fresh fish from his boat, they wouldn't have made such a great success of the restaurant in the early days. They opened up with some New Zealand flair. Elaine complained that there were no good sausages in Canada or pies like they had in New Zealand, so the concept of a Kiwi fish and chip shop was developed. Dad made for her what she missed from back home in New Zealand, starting out with a decent sausage. He used to grind the beef and the pork and make his own sausages. I remember him braiding the links like it was something he'd done his whole life. They started out with all types of pies, cheese and onion, bacon and egg, steak and mushroom, and even banana cream and cherry pies, but ended up with the three meat pies, some apple and peach, and of course the butter tarts they were known for. Mom also wanted the chips to be bigger, so Dad had to remove one of the blades from the chipper to give them some larger home-style cut chips. He created his own recipes, everything from the batter on the fish, the pies, the puff pastry, the sausage rolls, to the clam chowder. I don't think he wrote hardly any of the recipes down, and it was always just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I got him to try and teach me to make a few things, but I never ever made it as good as him. There's a great story I love about a lady that would come in with her glass dish and ask us to fill it up with cabbage rolls. Then she'd take it home and serve it to her company as homemade. Of course it was, but just not in her home. Dad loved the cottage and the life that he and Elaine built together side by side. I think that he loved his friends would always be able to come by for a coffee or a meal and a visit. Dad was a very social person, and he loved to connect to the customers, and many of them became friends with him over the years. If he had time for a break, you'd find him reading in the local paper and drinking a cup of coffee in the first booth, always ready to have a bit of a BS with somebody. Mom and Dad had many people work and train at the cottage over the almost 30 years that they ran the restaurant. Families like the Polenskis or my friend Karen's family, who had two older sisters, get trained there, just to mention a few. Many are still like family to us today. Paulini, as well as the Kiwi girls, Susan and Rachel, who worked for us for a year and ran the restaurant and lived in our house as we traveled to New Zealand to visit my mom's family. We're all still friends to this day, and I definitely consider them part of my extended cottage family. Mom and Dad hosted lots of family and friends over the years, opening up the restaurant just to have a get together and some meals for people passing through or visiting. And like his mother, he used to always feed people that were in need. There was always a couple of homeless people that used to come in and say, "Have you got anything hot for me, Russ? Anything on the cuff today?" And Dad always made sure nobody went home hungry. Even for years after they retired, they kept taking butter tarts to the tax accountants. We had lots of lovely get-togethers at the cottage. My mom and dad's surprise 25th wedding anniversary, and of course my 21st birthday party. Video not to be shown here. I think this still is good enough. My grandma's 90th, and countless other Christmas parties and family events. One point of pride for them, though, was when a well-known food critic named Anne Garber from Vancouver came over and anonymously critiqued their restaurant. They ended up getting a fantastic review in the Vancouver Sun, an almost full-page write-up. It was titled "Fishing for Compliments." And the article that they got in the paper brought in people from all around the world to try their fish and chips. A couple of years ago, for their anniversary, I had the article framed for them. This is a picture of them getting that gift. Mom and Dad were a great team in life and at the restaurant. Elaine did all the bookwork and kept the place sparkling clean. The food inspector often used to compliment her on how the restaurant was so clean and that she kept everything so nice, saying, "Man, I'd be out of business if everyone kept their place as nice as you do." Dad, of course, was the butcher, fish cutter, cook, baker, and front man that loved to talk to everyone and keep them coming back. They worked side by side for 27 years and worked 7 days a week for 17 of those years before they started to take a couple of days off a week. I don't even know how they did it. I was working in the fish and chip place off and on since I was about 17. It was great training ground. Some hard days too, tired feet, but we were together and I learned a lot, not only about restaurant life, but just about life. Dad always wanted Mom to stay connected to her New Zealand family. This is a picture in 1970 when they took their baby girl to visit the family down under. Dad stayed there for about 4 months, meeting all the family and showing off their pride and joy, their one girl. Here's a picture of Dad with Mom and her sister Glennis. Don't they look alike? Everyone used to mistake them for twins when they were younger. Here's a picture of Dad with the herrings. You can see here where I get my height from. The New Zealand family loved visiting with my dad. The herrings have a special place in their heart for Russ, and I think we'll have some messages from them later today. And then there was the trip in 1988-89 that we took with Conrad and Fritzy. Carla and I were allowed to tag along as 18-year-old kids. We got to travel the North and South Island and go to Australia. It was quite a tour. Even learned a few drinking games, including this salute that we got taught on the bus tour in the South Island. Dad loved to travel. They've been to many places. Mom must have given both Dad and I the travel bug. Tahiti, Fiji, Hawaii, Disneyland, Mexico, Australia. Here's a picture of Mom and Dad and I in Mount Maunganui, one of her favorite places in New Zealand. This is another one of them in New Zealand, in Raglan, visiting Susan and Tim at their backpackers. We spent the millennium in Thailand together. They even rode on some elephants. Here's some pictures of Dad in London, some Trafalgar Square, and of course having a hot dog in front of Buckingham Palace. He loved to go, and he always used to say he loved to come home. that there was never any place like the island to live. Soon after Mom and Dad retired, their baby girl finally got married. Dad walked me down the aisle so that he could hand me over to Trevor. We celebrated together in this very room at the yacht club. The two families were united, the Philbrooks and the Cunninghams. Then he got to see us have our two children, Ashley, who's now 13, and Joshua, who's 10. He traveled to Tsawwassen for many years while he was still well and healthy to visit the grandkids and, of course, the Philbrooks. We had many family gatherings, lots of birthday parties, and Christmases all together in Tsawwassen. He's a dedicated family man and always was there to show up for the kids. I'm so grateful that we got to move over to the island and be closer to him before he passed away. This is a picture of Ashley and Dad and my mom at a dance show that she did just the week before he passed. So glad that we were able to get him out and see him moving his head to the music and enjoying his granddaughter shine.
Have I told you lately that I love you? Could I tell you once again somehow? Have I told you how with all my heart and soul I need you? Well, darling, I'm telling you now. My heart would break in two if I should lose you. I am no good without you anyhow. Have I told you lately that I love you? Well, darling, I'm telling you now. Have I told you lately when I'm sleeping? Every dream that I dream is you somehow. And have I told you how my every thought is in your keeping? Well, darling, I'm telling you now. My world would end today if I should lose you. 'Cause I'm no good without you anyhow. Have I told you lately that I love you? Well, darling, I'm telling you now.
Some messages from family and friends afar.
Hello everybody, sending love from New Zealand, thinking of you all. And thinking about how we first met Russ and Elaine. Rach and I got to work for them at the Cottage Fish and Chips back in the 90s. It was the best job with the best bosses. And Russ taught me how to mop a floor properly. I always remember him for that. And I've gone on to teach a lot of people how to mop a floor properly. And look, we learned a lot about work, but we also had a great time. After our shifts, I remember sometimes we would sit down with some very strong homemade peach schnapps, or was it peach wine, and just sit around and laugh with Russ and Elaine. And great conversation, lots of jokes. And that's what I remember Russ the most for, I think, is his sense of humour, but also really always thinking about me and how he could help, and ideas for Rach and I to make our lives better. And so super thoughtful. The whole Cunningham family is just wonderful, and caring and thinking of others. And so I am thinking of you guys today, and I'm grateful that you've got to come and see where I live in New Zealand, and that we've kept the connection going. And Russ was a great man, be greatly missed, and so sending much love to you all and thinking of you.
Hello Roseanne and Canadian family. We are missing Russ as much as you are, and we just wish you God's blessing as you have this memorial service for him. Love you heaps, and God bless. Bye.
Hi Canadian family, just here to say that we really enjoyed Uncle Russ's company on his trips over to see us all, with Auntie E of course, and the time that we all came over and just shut up the fish and chip shop for us. We had many special memories, and we treasure those today. Hope you have a great memorial service for him, as I know you will be missing him dearly. Lots of love. God bless. Bye.
Uncle Ross shared a lovely video of time spent with Mum and Dad here and in Australia and New Zealand. Mention of many beers along the way too. But the video is too long for me to add to this slideshow. Norman, Nairi, and Rhonda and the family also sent this lovely quote. Grief is the last act of love we have to give to those we loved. Where there is deep grief, there was great love. For those of you that couldn't be with us on the day, I've done a collection of short videos from the celebration of life or memorial for Russ Cunningham.
A little more fun. My name's Terry Williams, which is the important part. Two things you need to know about me is I'm really shy and a pathological liar. So let's go over a couple of things. Beverages and stuff are over there. Here we are gathered. I find it kind of amazing, that all these people are here to just honor one guy. I can't imagine this many showing up to honor me when I'm gone. But no, I know. These people are just shaking their head going, no, you're on your own, buddy. But I love the fact that everybody here has a little tiny piece of Russ. Special memory or just a different angle. Everybody has a different little piece of Russ here tonight. And I'm not supposed to do this. That are here right now. It's kind of like having them here, all the photos and memorabilia and everything here. The beer I'm drinking reminds me of Russ. So yeah, I'm touched and deeply moved by everybody being here. This is fantastic.
Dad, he taught me a lot about life. Stuff that I didn't realize at the time, but his demeanor showed it all. Of the years that I knew Russ, there wasn't a day that I saw him angry. Stuff would go wrong, it didn't faze him. Charity was the biggest thing. Every person that he talked to, he touched one way or the other. If anyone was in need, you went to Russ.
On behalf of Elaine and our family, we want to thank you for being here to celebrate the life of Russ Cunningham. Russ was a wonderful man to many people, a wonderful husband, a wonderful father, a wonderful friend, a wonderful uncle, a brother, a wonderful grandfather. Some of you, he was a colleague, and other of you may have worked for him. I first met Russ and Elaine when one day I dropped off Rose at the Fish and Chips for her shift, and they came out to the parking lot to meet the new guy. And I don't know what it is about them, but right away I knew these were the type of people I can get along with. And over the course of our dating, I kind of concluded that I really do need people that I can not only get along with, but that my family can also get along with. And when we marry, we'll eventually merge, and it's just going to mesh like my grandparents meshed. It was really nice. So, over the time I dated with Roseanne, I came many times to Nanaimo, got to know Russ and Elaine really well, many wonderful dinners together. They had me over to the fish and chip shop many times, and I always got the Popeye. Well, most of the time I got the Popeye. Sometimes I got the oyster burger, but Popeye being one halibut and one lingcod and fries. And their hospitality to me was the same as to so many others, was warm and welcoming. And at one point along the way, I knew I wanted to marry Roseanne. And with a lot of nerves, I called up Russ and I asked his blessing that I proposed to his daughter. And he was fantastic about it. He was absolutely wonderful. I asked, now that you and I have spoken, do you mind holding that off and not telling Elaine for a little while? Give me half a day so that Rose can call her mom later on and do the surprise. And he was really happy to go along with that request. And it's just one of those things about his personality that I thought, you know what, he's just a great man. Russ was supportive of Roseanne and I when we wanted to buy our first home. He helped us out with a loan for our down payment, but also we got an inspection report that was pretty damning. And the night before our deal to close, I actually collapsed the deal. And then I talked to Russ, and him being in real estate, he said, is that house gonna fall over tomorrow? And it was that little bit of wisdom that just calmed my nerves. And I actually phoned up our agent and was able to resurrect a collapsed real estate deal, and we went ahead and bought our first home in 206.
Trevor reads a psalm and leads us in prayer for the people that could attend the service.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Father God, we're just so thankful that we have had Russ in our lives. The goodness and the mercy that you extol was really clear in the life of Russ good man, he was charitable, he loved one another, he loved people. He took care of people like the homeless, as Rose mentioned in the slideshow. He was looking out for people all the time. One of the things that I'd like everybody here to take away and just remember is the joy and the jolly nature that Russ had. He was so fun. And so, until we meet him again, we just ask that you take care for us and send him our love. Let him know that he's missed. In Jesus' name, amen.
Welcome. Ray Cunningham is my name, for anybody that might not know. And I was just telling Auntie Elaine, it was weird the way, I don't know about everybody's mind, but my mind worked. And I always think about Uncle Russ, but especially the last few days and leading up to this. And we got 3 dogs, 3 cats at home. I woke and I smelled something, and it was, I could smell fish and chips. It was weird. And I just wanted to say I concur with what everybody's been saying about Uncle Russ, and the stories are beautiful. I want to try to get some copies of some of those pictures, and it was very beautiful, Roseanne. And I'll finish off with a toast to Uncle Russ. Anyways, Uncle Russ, he was a good man and a good Cunningham. And not that there's any bad ones, but he was a very good one. So I believe I'm lucky to have had him as an Uncle Russ. An uncle ended up being my neighbor and a good friend. And some of the things, you know, he probably helped me, some of the values that I have, like hard work, and like some of the people were saying here, Cunninghams don't tell you how to do stuff. You just watch them and kind of learn. So I learned how to be a hard worker, watching him and watching my dad work, and that smile and the warmth that he brought. I concur with the last person who was up here. I've never seen him be mad at anybody. Well, save Luke Kale when he was caught at his house upstairs. That was before it was legal, but he didn't punch or anything. He was upset. But other than that, I've never seen him be mad at all. And that glow and feeling of welcome all the time. And when I think Uncle Russ, I think of Grandma, our beautiful grandmother, and Rosebud, and Dick, and Bob, and all our family, my dad, you know, everyone, the kids, everybody. And I think of family, and it makes me feel good. That's how it makes me feel. And I also learned change. You know, you're talking about from being a bartender to all of a sudden being a car salesperson, and then a big job, you know, selling real estate. I learned watching them that, you know, change is normal. You know, I guess the only thing you can do with change, it's going to happen. You just got to kind of just jump onto it and try to steer it the best way you can for yourself. Change is inevitable. And I might get this. I was young when Auntie Elaine came along, and so I watched Russ go from a bachelor, and everybody else around was married up and kids and stuff that we played with. And so I thought he went away and got Elaine, but I guess he picked her up at the bar, whatever. That's not a bad thing. Anyway, he came back with Auntie Elaine, and she had an accent, and that was different, but it was beautiful. And so I saw the family grow, and I was, you know, a small part of it, and I just thought it was such a beautiful thing, and saw them stay together like forever, just like that. It was beautiful. And I remember when I was young, I had to be 10 or 11 or so. Russ had a side gig. He got a concession stand. So, and I do remember being a kid when he had the cafe. I was a really young kid, probably barely able to walk, but anyways, I remember the concession stand, and he hired me. So I don't know if I was getting, you know, as I look back on it, maybe I was just getting babysit. I thought I had a job. Yes, but anyway, I was there, and he rigged up this trailer, and Elaine and I worked. They towed us to the Mountain River by the bridge there. We worked there and sold cotton candy and hot dogs and pop anyways, it was a lot of fun. He made it fun, and Elaine made it fun. So, you know, I learned work to be fun too.
Thank you, Ray.
And I mean, it's the truth. I mean, things I remember. And then I remember at Toyota, I was probably washing cars there, or, you know, on or about that time. And I remember the jackets, seeing our Toyota jackets, and Russ doing a good job of selling cars. Again, changed from restaurants to car sales. So it helped me to learn and work hard. And then, like I say, the big job in real estate. And then I saw them go from that business to my mom had a house, and Elaine and Russ had the idea to start another restaurant. So they got together and made that deal and made that blue building and turned it into Cottage Fish and Chips. And then, as a side note, this morning I was at the auction looking at some cars this morning, and so I'm thinking Uncle Russ, and I said to a guy that was there, that's from around in Elmo, I said, "You remember the Cottage Fish and Chips?" And how many years ago was that? The cottage?
18,
18?
17, 18.
Anyways, I just thought, I says, "Do you remember the Cottage Fish and Chips?" He goes, "Oh yeah." He says, I worked down by the water there, and I'd go up and get, I can remember right now, you know, two fish and chips and wrapped up in the newspaper, and I mean, you know, that's 20 years ago, and it's just a random guy who remembered Russ like that, and he remembered Elaine, and he remembered Roseanne too. I mean, it was a team. It was a beautiful team. Anyways, and wow, that was a meeting place, because they were always working, so if you wanted to see them,
You had to go there.
kill two birds with one stone, have dinner, and see Auntie Elaine over Russ, and sometimes Grandma there too.
Yeah.
And I remember that 90th with Grandma there, and it was beautiful. You guys had the wing that you built on there, and it was just great times. Anyways, they sold that, and again, just part of change. I watched them restore the house beside Uncle Dick's house and take it from an old place to something nice and livable, and a cute little place in the corner, and then get some extra money with the sign there. Restoring the sign, I helped them fix the sign a couple times, and so did Luke. Anyways, just wanted to say, Russ, I love you, and you helped us all feel good, and I'm sure he, in some way, touched not only of all the people here, but, you know, hundreds or thousands of other people, and that's a beautiful thing. Not everybody can do that. So, with that in mind, for me, I'm just going to remember Russ and his happiness and his smiles, and try to share that. And with that, we'll have a toast to Uncle Russ.
Cheers.
Uncle Russ, cheers. Thank you.
My name is Jana, and I've known Roseanne since I was 10 years old, and she was my best friend through all of our growing up years. And Russ and Elaine, Mr. and Mrs. C, you were my second parents, really, in so many ways. A lot of my values were actually shaped by your family, especially hospitality and generosity. I found my home family in the way that you made everyone feel so welcome in your world. Everybody felt important, and everybody left with a smile on their face. And I model that today. That's something that comes from you, truly. My family was also hospitable, but it was more like, also, can you give us a hand with this box of junk that we need to offload and sort into other boxes, because my family was an auction family, which is actually one of the funny stories I wanted to share about Mr. Penningham. My grandfather was Gibb Stevens, and so if anybody went to Quarterway or Stevens Auctions, Russ loved a good deal, as you all probably know. And, I remember we used to have showing on, you could come by on Tuesday afternoon to see what was on sale on Wednesday. And he would come and he'd sneak and he says, "Don't tell him I'm here." And he could put in these advance bids, absentee bids we called them, and always on boxes of miscellaneous. And Mr. Penningham would often, they'd know he was at the auction when on Thursday morning they'd wake up and there'd be little figurines peppered all over the house where there were none before, tchotchkes and little things. I think one of those times it worked out not so good for Roseanne. I think this is the story, Rose, that you got a set of car keys for Christmas, but it was actually a card that he got from a box of miscellaneous, a little toy car. He had that sense of humor, that sort of little sparkle he'd get in his eye, and there were so many stories that I could pick from. One of them that I'd like to tell you about is the time that he actually gave me my first drink. I was like, maybe, I think I don't know how old I would have been. It was a sleepover at your house. And Elaine, as beautifully kept the cottage was, so was the home. And Roseanne had the 2 beds in your bedroom, and I had a really bad cold, and so I got offered a hot toddy.
Okay, it's not too bad.
Yeah. Sure, I said, okay, sounds good. And I couldn't, it was so gross. And I was like, oh God, I can't offend because it was hot and it was supposed to be good for my throat, and I drank it. And then I got to the end and realized he forgot to mix up stir it, so at the bottom was all the honey. And then I had to drink all the honey. And I think he kind of knew, because I was like, and I think he kind of knew that was happening, and he still thought that was pretty funny. So, so and that is another thing. I do like my wine, so I think maybe I thank Mr. Penningham for that. But thank you for always making me feel safe. When my parents split up, you gave me a home. You gave me a home for 2-3 weeks. I was able to just move into your home, and you just said yes, of course. And just gave me some space that I needed at a time that I needed it so badly. And Mr. Cunningham was so loving towards me, and he was always there with a joke. He just understood, and he didn't need to talk about it, he just understood. And so I want to say how much I love you, all your family. And this is a huge loss for us all. He lives on through us all, and will carry his love with us throughout our whole lives. So thank you so much.
Anybody else? No. I get the last word. This is so cool. So, having watched and seen everybody's stories about Russ, I think the big lesson here is the small acts of kindness and the effects that it cascades everywhere, right? Teaching somebody a new skill or a joke or a kind word, and how that can deeply affect everybody in the world, really. Look at everybody here. You know, and it didn't stop here. It continues with small acts of kindness, and he was the king of that. I miss him. I really do. He was such a good guy. So, here's to a good guy. Russ Cunningham.
Cheers.
Cheers. not have a drink. I finished it.
So, next part of the show, there's food. Right over there. Help yourself to some refreshments and by all means mingle and share your stories and have another drink. Bar closes at 4, so hurry. Thank you very much.
Here are just a few pictures of the day so that those that couldn't attend feel like you were included. The display, the room, us preparing for our speeches. A few photos of the different speakers that went up, Jana, my husband Trevor, Paul, and Terry. Others that got up to speak were Leaf, one of the very first workers from the cottage when we opened, his mother, Elizabeth, who said a few kind words about how the cottage and my parents inspired Leaf in his career, and my friend June, who spoke very highly of myself and my parents and how we all were such a great family. Lots of family and friends came to the service. Some people from Dad's past that I didn't even really know. Great to have the room full of people that loved him, to show my mom and my kids how important of a man he was in all of our lives. Cousins, neighbors, family, friends. Mom and I felt very blessed to have such good friends and family there to support us. Mom was so inspired by the day. This shy lady even got up to say a thank you to everyone for coming and a thank you to me for putting on such a great service. I was so touched by her strength. At the end of the celebration of life, Terry and a few of my close friends and some family all went back to Mom's house and had a few more stories to share in the yard, celebrating Dad's life together and just remembering him as he would want to be remembered. For those of you that couldn't be at the service, we heartfelt knew you wanted to be there, and I hope that this movie or a slideshow brings you to feeling closer to the day and to my dad. Thank you.